Real-World Computer Programming for Kids, Step 34. Letters from our readers around the world. I hope everybody is feeling just hunky-dory today. We have something different for you today. Questions from our readers from all over the world. Well, at least from all over the United States. A couple from England, one from Canada, and one from Africa. We hope to have an even more inclusive group next time. Let's get right down to the questions, which, as was mentioned, came to us from all over the place. And so, without further ado, or it don't, here are the questions and answers. Anne Shirley from Avonlea, Prince Edward Island, Canada, asks, I just found out about your newsletter. What have I missed? Should I go back and read all of them? Thanks for your question, Anne, with an E. You have missed quite a bit, but you can catch up without much of a problem. Your reputation as a hard worker is known to all. Moreover, we started off assuming that the reader knew nothing about programming, so unless you're already a fantastical programmer, I do recommend that you indeed go back and read all of them. In fact, the lessons, I call them steps in a journey, are best followed sequentially from the beginning. They're kind of like a sitcom in that way, where one episode leads to the next. Next question is from Gloria Stivic from Queens, New York. What do you plan for the future with real-life computer programming for kids? What's in store? Thanks for that question, Gloria. The plan is to break up the regular steps with occasional batches of letters from readers, such as this one, and this or that, just for a fun diversion, such as the bonus post on how to save your parents up to $20 million per month that we had a while back. But as to the bulk of the content, we are in the process of wrapping up the Windows Forms part of the journey and heading toward database fill, so to speak. After that, we will delve into web technologies, how to create websites, and then onto mobile apps. Now, Richie Petrie from New Rochelle, New York asks, how long will it take me to become a good programmer? Good question, Richie. Of course, that depends on your definition of good programmer and your own natural talents. Most of all, though, how hard you work at it will determine how long it takes you. If you really apply yourself, you will see quick progress and may surprise yourself at your aptitude and the progress you make. By the time you finish each section of this newsletter, you should be equipped to tackle that kind of project. Windows Forms, then databases, then web stuff, and finally mobile apps. All the best. John Boy Walton from Walton's Mountain, Virginia, wants to know, will I get a diploma for taking this course? No, you won't, John Boy. What you will gain is a foundation of knowledge for accomplishing all sorts of programming projects. If you do pursue computer programming as a profession, or even as a hobby, as I have heard that what you are really interested in is writing, this will give you a solid introduction into an accredited course. That is to say, it will give you a head start in achieving the goal of becoming a productive programmer. Good night, John Boy. Pedro Sanchez from Preston, Idaho says, how much does it cost to subscribe to this newsletter? Hello, Pedro. Say hi to your friends for us and to Tina the Llama. The cost is $7 per month or $70 for a year. Since 7 times 12 equals 84, when you subscribe for a year, you save $14. Enough for the ingredients to build at least a couple of cakes, I would say. Also, by subscribing, you obtain access to all of the previous lessons or steps in the journey, too. Plus, when you subscribe, you get PDFs of the 4 books that are going to be written on the 4 main technologies, Windows Forms, databases, web, and mobile, when they are published. Why do you choose the tools you do, is the question asked by Jamal Wallace from Bronx, New York. Hello, Jamal. Since we haven't gotten past the Windows Forms part of the journey just yet, I'm assuming you mean the following: Visual Studio as an IDE, or integrated development environment, and C# as a programming language. But I'm going to add some of the other tools here too, as I might as well preemptively or proactively answer your question regarding them also. So for the database aspect of things, we're going to use MySQL as the DBMS, or database management system, and Database Workbench as a database productivity tool. When it comes to the web technologies, we will use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript languages and technologies for web projects, and ASP.NET, a web-centric application framework. For mobile apps, we are going to use Java as the programming language and Android Studio as the IDE, or integrated development environment. In each case, I chose the above tools for 3 reasons. 1, I believe they are quality tools, either the best in class or tied for best. 2, I am familiar with them and enjoy working with them. And, drumroll, 3, they are free to you. No charge, no cost. Nada. Zilch. The one tool among these that is a little different is Database Workbench. DBWB is the easiest way to work with databases of any that I have ever tried, although Toad is also good if you are working with an Oracle database. DBWB is different than the other tools because it is, for the most part, a paid product and well worth the money. But this particular version of DBWB that we are going to use is free. That is to say, the MySQL Lite version of DBWB. Truth be told, I probably would have went with MS SQL Server as my database choice, although I also love Firebird, because of its popularity, my familiarity with it, and because it is a natural fit for Visual Studio, since both are Microsoft products. But the free factor of DBWB for MySQL, DBWB from MS SQL Server costs money, tipped me MySQL words. So, although I understand database technology and SQL, or SQL, I myself will be undertaking a bit of a learning curve when it comes to using MySQL as our DBMS, Database Management System. One other thing I will mention is Android Studio, the IDE for working with Android phone and tablet projects. I call it Androidio, but the cats behind it don't like that moniker. I still call it that, though. Note, Java, a great language and similar enough to C# that you shouldn't have a huge adjustment going from one to the other, and JavaScript, used for controlling and responding to actions on web pages, have a very similar name, but have very little in common other than their name, and that they are both programming languages. Although some would say that JavaScript is just a scripting language, not a full-fledged programming language. Whatever. You might compare them to Harper Lee, author of To Kill a Mockingbird, and Alvin Lee, guitarist for 10 Years After, who performed at Woodstock. Same last name, but not a lot in common, except they are both humans, or were both humans. And then it shows a picture of the two of them, and the caption is, "Can you guess which one is which?" Which you should be able to, even if you don't know who they are. And by the way, Jamal, I'm glad that you found Forrester. Here's a question from Hush Puppy from Isle de Charles du Chet, Louisiana. Not sure if that's the right pronunciation. Are there hidden costs involved? Will we have to buy additional software and or hardware to follow along with these steps on the journey, as you call these lessons? Nice to see you again, Hush Puppy. Naturally, there are always things you might want to purchase, such as a larger monitor, screen, not lizard, or even 2 monitors, but you won't need to purchase anything at all. In fact, even this newsletter itself is free, for the most part. I attach that qualifier because non-subscribers do not get all of the content, and they do not get the PDFs of the 4 books as they are published. To expand a little, based on what particular projects you might work on in the future, but not as a part of these steps on our journey, you may find that you really want to purchase some additional software, such as Expose Cells, if you are programmatically creating and manipulating Excel spreadsheet files, for example, or hardware, such as a barcode scanner if you are working on that sort of app. But no, for what we are going to do and where we are going on our journey, you won't have to spend one measly cent. And I have the asterisk that says, I am not affiliated with the makers of Expose Cells or Database Workbench or any of the other tools I use or mention for that matter. I simply have used them and found them to be good. I wish you all the best, Hush Puppy. Here's a question from Meg, Joe, Beth, and Amy March of Concord, Massachusetts. Which email address should I use to send in questions to you? I answer, you can keep doing as you did. Enter your question at the bottom of one of the steps. If you prefer to keep your question private, though, until it is printed, please send it to us at idiolectable@gmail.com. How many people are on your team there? This is a question from Christopher Robin of Chelsea, London, England. Well, the people at Substack who host this newsletter can be considered a part of our team, I guess. But to answer your question in the way I assume you meant it, there are 2 of us. I, Clay Shannon, write the code, and I am writing this step, while my alter ego, Blackbird Crow Raven, who is kind of crazy, but in a good way, for the most part, writes the steps, articles or posts or lessons or whatever you want to think of them as. We usually call them steps. Sometimes BCR's rantings and ravings and warblings are a little too wacky and zany for my taste, with all the weird stuff he throws into these steps. I wish he would just stick to the facts and let his wild imagination hibernate or something, but this whole thing was his idea, so I have to just live with it, I reckon. Willis Jackson from New York, New York, in other words, from Manhattan, wants to know, how much will it cost me total to take this course? I mean, including all the extra junk I will have to buy. What you talking about, Willis? That question was already answered above. But you didn't know that, of course, when you submitted your question. I just put your somewhat redundant question here to re-emphasize the fact that the price of the subscription is all that you'll have to pay. This assumes you already have a computer that runs Windows. A laptop will do. Here's a question from Tarzan out of the African jungle. Do I need Visual Studio in order to benefit from real-world computer programming for kids? No, but it would help a lot. You can learn a lot just by reading the steps without actually following along or playing along, as I sometimes call it. But most people learn better when there's a hands-on element to their learning experience. You can learn by watching, but it doesn't compare to learning by doing. And remember, there are versions of Visual Studio which are free. You should be able to swing free, right? Here's a question, rather impertinent question it seems, from Victoria Barkley of Stockton, California. I am not a baby goat. Why do you say this newsletter is for kids? I did think twice before naming it that for two reasons. One is the reason you mentioned. Young humans are not young goats, and it is young goats who are actually kids. You might want to reread the intro, which talked about why the word kids was used, even though your humble correspondent was fully aware that a kid is, in actuality, a young goat, not a human. The other reason I had second thoughts about using that word is that this journey is not restricted to the young. Anyway, anybody from 8 to 80, or even above or below that, can go along with us on this journey. As Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself. If your extremely young or old age hinder you, we will help carry you together. That is to say, we are here to answer your questions. In fact, note the next question that was asked below. And there's a picture of Einstein as displayed there. Who are you calling kids, Sonny? I'll have you know that I am 117 years young and I don't miss a single step in the journey. This is from Daisy Mae Granny Moses from Beverly Hills, California. I apologize if I ruffled your feathers there, Granny. I'm glad to hear that someone with your vast amount of life experience is benefiting from our efforts. Think of it as meaning kids of all ages. Tell Jed, Jethro, and Ellie Mae hello from all of us. Miss Jane Marple from St. Mary Mead, England, wants to know, why so much refactoring? Because we are not perfect. We are human. No matter how long we think about a programming project before starting in on the actual coding, there are always some things that it turns out we forgot or didn't realize we would need to change. As the old expression goes, the only constant is change. And that's what refactoring is, changing your code. And it's a constant or ongoing process. An author once said that books are never really finished, just abandoned. It is similar with some software programs. There are always more things that could be added to them, but sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. Just like bugs, which need to be fixed, refactoring has to be done as we realize better ways to do things in our code. To write a bug-free app that needs no refactoring, the programmer would have to be a stone-cold genius who knew everything about everything and could foresee the future with perfect accuracy. Of course, we're talking about a software project of any real size here. It is possible to write a simple utility, a one-trick pony kind of app that works perfect from the outset, but even then, only once you have gained some experience at coding and have a good idea of what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. The final question is from Becky Thatcher from St. Petersburg, Missouri. It seems like there's no end of things to learn. Do you have to be a genius to be a programmer? There is a lot to learn, Becky. I'm not going to pull the wool over your eyes. But if you take it a step at a time and don't put too much pressure on yourself to do everything perfectly or to understand everything immediately, you'll be fine if you are of average intelligence. Of course, it helps to be a little smarter than the average bear, but for those who are just average, they can make up for it by trying harder. Think of the tale of the turtle and the rabbit, or if you prefer, the tortoise and the hare. To answer your question more directly and succinctly, no, you don't have to be a genius. I'm not one. Don't worry about it, Becky. Besides, your friend Tom Sawyer tells me that you are resourceful and a very good scholar. That's all you need. Find a way and do the work. And there's a picture of the tortoise and the hare. That's it for today. Now we look forward to your questions for future editions of this Letters from Readers Step along this journey that we are all taking together. Until the next step, adios and farewell.